Hello, and welcome to HUD Home Buying, Part 1, Agent Questions and Facts. I'm Janice Getlin, Managing Partner of Truckee Mountain Properties and TMP Realty. I'd like to introduce Paul Krause, Partner Broker and HUD Local Listing Broker in Nevada and California.
Hi.
Hi. So I've got quite a few questions. I've never helped a buyer purchase a HUD home. We've been looking at a lot of them, and I've been really surprised. It's such a great variety out there in all price ranges, but I have a lot of questions.
Go ahead.
Okay. So first of all, I'm seeing a lot of them on the MLS. I want to make sure, is that where I would find all the HUD homes?
Yeah, the MLS is a good way to find it if you're an agent or if you're a buyer represented by an agent. They're also on HUDHomestore.com. That's the nationwide website. You can type in by state or by county or by zip code and search properties there.
Okay. And then once I find one, I'm assuming it's on a regular MLS lockbox?
It is. There's no special key required. It's usually vacant. On an MLS lockbox, you can just go and show the property.
Okay. And are the utilities on?
No, the utilities are not on.
Okay. And then once we do find a property and my client wants to make an offer, we'll come up with the terms, put the offer together, and I'm assuming that I would send that to you then?
No, the offers or what they call bids are made directly electronically on HUDHomestore.com.
Okay. And when I go in there, do I create an account for myself?
Well, the first thing you would need, or that your broker would need, would be a NAID number, N-A-I-D number. That stands for Name Address Identifier. Then what happens is the broker goes and registers on HUDHomestore.com, just in a process that's similar to registering for a shopping site, let's say on the website. Then you, as the agent, would register with your account separately, but under that broker's NAID number.
Okay, so my broker would have to have a NAID number in order for me to put the bid in?
That's correct. And if you do find yourself in a scenario where your broker does not have a NAID number, it can take a little bit of time to get one. So if your client is really interested in a particular property and wants to make an offer then and there, I would suggest that you refer that to a broker with a NAID number.
Okay, so we go ahead and we put the offer in. Now, do we upload the whole contract, or is it one of those things where you just put the basic terms in?
You're going to put the basic terms. You're going to fill in the electronic blanks and then click submit.
Okay, and what are the kinds of things that I'm going to need to know? I know with some of these REOs, and I know this is not exactly an REO, but I know that they want to know if I were asking for buyer credit back, for example, they want to know an amount, or just HUD want to know an amount or a percentage?
Yes, well that would be included, you would follow that on the HUDHomestore.com site and just fill in the blank as necessary there.
And is there any space in there to put in verbiage, so I want to tell them something special, like I can type in notes?
No, it's pretty much, dollars and cents. They who the buyer is, they want you to identify the buyer and identify the basic terms, and then they will get back to you with regard to acceptance.
Now, my buyer is a first-time buyer, and she's going to live in the property, and I had a couple questions about that.
Sure.
In terms of writing up the offer. First of all, how much earnest money deposit is there a specific amount HUD wants?
Yeah, if the sales price is $50,000 and under, the earnest money is $500. If the sales price is greater than $50,000, the earnest money is $1,000.
Okay, that's not bad at all. That's actually very good.
No, they do. This is part, I think, of the buyer, owner-occupant buyer-friendly aspect of the HUD marketing program. Those are pretty modest earnest money deposits.
And so you mentioned the HUD Home Buyer Program. Is there kind of a special program for them? Is there like a time when it's blocked out just for owner-occupants?
Yes, there are. There are a number of built-in advantages, and there have been some recent changes actually to some of this. There is an owner-occupant exclusive bid period, and that depends on, how long that is depends on what type of property it is. If the property is basically FHA insurable, then that owner-occupant exclusive period is 15 days. If it's not FHA insurable, that owner-occupant exclusive bid period is 5 days. There is also what we call a bid aggregation period at the beginning of the listing. So at the beginning of the listing on an FHA insurable property, there is a bid aggregation period of 10 days. That is, all of the bids that are placed within 10 days of the listing coming on the market are reviewed on the next business day after, as if they were submitted simultaneously.
Oh, okay. So as long as we're within that time frame, we don't need to worry just before the time is up.
Right, from the initial period of the listing. For non-FHA insured or insurable properties, that bid aggregation period is 5 days.
So can you tell me the difference between FHA insurable and non-insurable? I mean, an example, does that just mean it's the non-insurable or not as in good a condition? Or what does that mean? Is it as for FHA loan?
Yeah, well, there are other reasons why a property may not be FHA insurable. It may be a manufactured home without the plate of origin. It may be that it's in a floodplain or is in some other sort of specially designated zone. So it is not necessarily a property condition. And again, in some cases, if the manufacturer of that manufactured home is still in business, you can go out and actually get a plate of origin and then ask for a change in the status of the property from FHA uninsurable to FHA insurable. So it's not cut and dried or exclusively based upon the condition of the property.
And you had mentioned there was a time when only owner-occupants can put in the bids.
That's right.
Or that they would be considered during
That's
that time. You know, that's a great feature because we've been putting in a lot of offers and we've been beat out most of the time by cash buyers who are investors who are not going to live in the property. So I really like this, that HUD is kind of looking out for the owner-occupant, trying to build the neighborhoods and get people who are going to live there in the neighborhood.
Well, and there's another important aspect of this that you alluded to. In the bid evaluation process, HUD is indifferent as between cash and finance. HUD looks at net to HUD, which is basically calculated sales price minus commissions minus buyer's closing costs. Doesn't matter to them whether it's financed or it's cash. So if you're competing with somebody who's flush with cash, cash is not king.
That's unusual and it's great for my buyer. She's well qualified, but it is hard to compete against cash. And a lot of the REO properties, the non-HUD Fannie Mae type of things, they really do look for cash. So this is a wonderful bonus to HUD properties.
Yeah.
So let's say we've got our offer in there. Oh, I had one other question on the inspection time. Is there a particular length of inspection that I should put in the contract?
Well, no. Well, the inspection time is set by default as 15 days from the date of acceptance or contract ratification. So you would have 15 days from the date you're given notice your contract is ratified. And let me say, that's not the same thing as bid acceptance. What happens is you're notified when your bid is accepted. Then you will be sent a sales contract package. You'll need to complete that sales contract package, including the earnest money deposit, commitment letter for financing, proof of funds for cash. Submit that usually within 2 business days to the asset management company. The asset management company will review those materials, and if they are all, everything's filled out properly, then they will give you notice. Okay, contract is ratified, it's accepted. That's when your 15 days starts.
Well, that kind of answered my question because I was going to ask you what happened after we got the acceptance on the computer. Then you say we get a contract package, and that brings up another question. Is the contract package a separate contract from the contracts we would normally use, or is it just an addendum to that contract?
Well, no, it's not a standard, it's not an addendum to, let's say, your standard offer and acceptance MLS local document. It's a 2-page, it's HUD's own contract, and it's basically a 2-page document. It's designed to be very simple and straightforward.
All right, so then we have the 2 days to fill it out. We get it back, and presuming we did a great job, we would get acceptance, and then we'd have 15 days from that point to do our inspections.
That's right.
Okay, so at that point, I would assume I'd call you and you turn on the utilities?
No, there's an additional party here. That party is called the Field Services Manager. Okay. They're responsible for the utilities and the maintenance of the property. You would either, the information will be provided to you concerning who that Field Service Manager is, or you can call the local listing broker and get that information. You would contact the field services manager. You would request that the utility, permission to have the utilities be turned on, which they may grant in whole or in part. They may say, okay, you can turn the electricity on, but you can't turn the water on. And you would have then 72 hours to complete your inspections. You would need to turn the utilities on in your name, and then, or your buyer's name, whoever it is, and then those would be your costs.
Okay, and there are costs, so
Yes.
these are not reimbursed
Utility
to us.
costs, no.
Okay, and you said that sometimes we're not granted permission to turn everything on. Suppose we're not granted permission to turn on the water, then are there any other ways we could test that the plumbing is okay?
Well, yes, there are, or if you need the water turned on, you can hire a licensed plumber, have them do a pressure test of the plumbing system, and if it passes, you can that may suffice for you, your client, or for your lender. If not, then you can submit that pressure test to the field services manager and ask them to reconsider their decision concerning turning on the water.
Okay, so let's suppose we go through the inspections and we find that it needs a new roof. At that point, is HUD amenable to doing that kind of a repair?
Well, no. And to back up a little bit, is when you go on HUD Home Store, there's a tab called PCR, which stands for Property Condition Report. That gives the basics of the condition of the property. And HUD properties are sold as is. So they really don't, the only circumstances in my experience where they will do repairs is if there has been some sort of vandalism, or consider doing repairs, I should say, is if there's been some vandalism during the contract period, or for lead-based paint remediation of up to $4,000.
Okay, so at that point, let's suppose we take that contingency off. And oh, by the way, I know that some bank-owned or government-owned properties have what they call a passive inspection contingency, such that once that time, say the 15 days has passed, if we don't actively remove that contingency, it'll just be assumed that we've accepted the property in that condition.
If you have any question about the deadline expiring, I would talk to your local listing broker, and I would request some sort of formal recognition, preferably from the asset manager, that you are extending your contingency period. I think that's better safe than sorry. And the same thing is true with the closing process. If you know you're going to need to extend, get that would go to the escrow company, the title company. But get that done ahead of time. I would strongly, I think one of the good features of the HUD marketing program is that you have local listing brokers and asset managers who are readily able to to communicate with you. As in not a situation with perhaps other institutionally owned properties or brokers where they can be a little bit scarce. Okay. The idea here is to be accessible.
Okay. Assuming everything goes okay and the property closes, do we call you to get the key?
Well, you don't get a key.
Okay.
All right. What happens is, because HUD key properties are keyed to several masters, for the security of your own client as well as for the security of HUD properties, you would rekey the property upon close. You don't get a key. And what we do in our firm is we try to meet the buyer's agent out of the property after close, and so at least to save them the cost of having the locksmith pick the lock. But you don't get a key.
Okay. This particular client that I'm working with, she's looking at, it's a 30 to 45 day close. However, her lease is up a little before that, and so she was wondering if HUD would either rent her, or if she could store some of her stuff in the garage, maybe say a week before close.
No, that's a pretty bright line rule with HUD. They do not want anybody moving themselves or their personal property onto the property before close.
Okay. What about, there is one thing, one of the properties looking at, it had an orange bedroom, and she has a 3-year-old and she wants to move in, as you know, pretty quickly here. Mm-hmm. Could she at least get that room painted maybe a couple of days before close?
No.
No changes at all?
No changes, no paint, no nothing.
Okay, all right, so when we do close, we don't get the key. Well, we turn the utilities on, I guess, ourselves.
Right,
Right.
after close, that's right, yeah.
Okay. This actually sounds like a really good program. I'm really excited about the buyer exclusion period, and the earnest money deposit isn't that much. It sounds like they're willing and able to close fairly quickly.
Well, and there's a little bit more than that. You talk about the escrow period, earnest money deposit being low. FHA financing, one of the more attractive features of it is that it does offer a lower down payment usually. And HUD has a program, a repair escrow program, which actually makes FHA insured loans available to more people than they would otherwise be available to. If you have a property that would be FHA insurable, but for minor repairs of up to $5,500, you can, or in some cases HUD will actually list the property with a repair escrow, so that if you use FHA financing, let's say there are $3,500 worth of repairs, you have a repair escrow set up for $3,500. Upon close, or upon whatever time your lender deems appropriate, you complete those repairs. Let's say those repairs cost $2,500. You've got the $1,000 left over. That goes back to the credited back against the principal balance of your loan. And what that has the effect of making more properties FHA insurable than would otherwise be. And it also gives you as a buyer's agent a few more options. Let's say you have a property that's FHA insurable. Let's say that you catch something, some condition in the kitchen that was not caught before. You can ask, hey, I'd like to turn this now into an FHA with a repair escrow. If HUD has identified certain certain escrow repairs, and you find another one, you can ask to have that included. Now this is only for FHA insured loans, but it gives you a lot of flexibility and a lot more options as a buyer or as a buyer's agent.
It really does. I'm excited about this. And thank you so much, Paul.
Well, thank you.
All right, take care. Thank you for joining me.